Hi guys, Amanda Decker here. I am the provider at DMA Weight and Wellness, and I'm here today with someone who I believe we have kind of a kindred spirit with each other as far as health. We're both healthcare providers that got demystified in traditional healthcare, got tired of chasing illness and started chasing health. And I welcome Dr. Jen Simmons to my channel. Dr. Jen Simmons started her professional career as Philadelphia's first fellowship-trained breast surgeon. After spending 17 years as Philadelphia's top breast surgeon, her own illness led her to discover functional medicine. So enamored with the concept of creating health rather than killing disease, she left traditional medicine and her esteemed surgical position in 2019 and founded Real Health MD with the mission to help women anywhere along their breast cancer journey truly heal. Dr. Simmons, welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted to be here. I loved that word that you used. I didn't realize that I was demystified by the medical system, but in fact, that did happen, right?
Yeah.
That happened.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I vividly remember the point in my career where I was like, I cannot continue to do this. I just cannot continue to practice medicine the way that I had been for years. And my career and life changed from that moment on.
I hear you. Yeah, that does happen.
All right, so let's start with, can you just tell our viewers a little bit about your story and how you became passionate about breast cancer?
Yeah. So I really never knew a time in my life where breast cancer didn't exist, wasn't a pivotal part of it. As a child, I had a first cousin. Her name was Linda Creed. She was a singer-songwriter in the 1970s and 1980s. She wrote all the music for the Spinners and the Stylistics, for those of you who are old enough to know what that means. Her most famous song, she wrote 54 hits, but her most famous song was The Greatest Love of All. So she wrote that in 1977 as the title track to the movie The Greatest, starring Muhammad Ali. But it really received its acclaim when Whitney Houston released that song to the world. And at that time, it would spend 14 weeks at the top of the charts. Only Linda would never know, because she died of metastatic breast cancer just 1 month after Whitney released that song.
Wow.
I was 16 years old and my hero died. Right? People use that term like, oh, my cousin's a rock star. My cousin was literally a rock star.
Wow.
Right. And so her life and ultimately her death gave birth to my life's purpose.
Wow.
So I do the only thing I know how to do. I become a doctor. I become a surgeon. I become the first fellowship trained breast surgeon in Philadelphia. And I spend a lot of time, many years, thinking I am doing great work and making meaningful impact. And in some capacity, and certainly in that capacity, I did and I was. Yeah. In that I was doing great things, innovative things, really believing that I was providing a silver lining for people who were in the worst spot of their lives. Because let's face it, nothing is worse to a woman than a breast cancer diagnosis. Even though there are far worse diagnoses, there is not a far worse perceived diagnosis. And I think part of that is because the breasts are so public. It's like you can't have breast cancer privately because it alters so much about you, right? It not only alters your appearance, but it alters who you are. It alters who you think you are. It alters your relationship to your parent, your spouse, your child, your friends. And so it's a really public disease that gets so much public attention. So, it's really the worst time in a woman's life. And I thought that I was offering them a silver lining in that I was doing something called oncoplastics, which means that I was doing both the cancer part of the surgery, but I was also doing the reconstructive part. So I was giving the woman with a cancer diagnosis the opportunity to fix what she might not have otherwise fixed, like what don't you like about your breasts, right? Are they too large? Are they too small? Are they too round? Are they too long? Are they too pointy? Are they too high? Are they too low? Because I can fix that while I'm there, right? And I believed for a long time that like that was my special sauce. That was my gift, is that I was going to make that kind of difference that they weren't getting anywhere else. And so I was doing that and running the cancer program for my hospital. And at the same time, I'm a wife and a mother and a stepmother and an athlete and a philanthropist. And I have all these balls in the air. And I really, like most people who are young and capable and successful, I thought I had it all figured out, right? I thought I was an expert juggler. And I was, until I wasn't, right? So I will never forget the day that all of my balls came crashing down. And, you know, it was a normal occurrence for me, a usual occurrence for me that I would go play tennis for an hour or two before work, shower, go into work and start my day. And I could play tennis for 6 hours. I mean, I just was the Energizer bunny out there. There wasn't, you know, I was never ready to be done. And so, you know, I go out and I warm up and I cannot catch my breath. And I haven't done anything yet and I can't catch my breath. I can't walk across the room and there is no air for me. So I go to the ER. I have like an exhaustive 3-day workup and I'm sitting in the office of my friend and colleague and physician. And he tells me that I need to have surgery, chemoradiation, lifelong medication. And I'm having an out-of-body experience. I can't believe that despite the fact that these are things that I say to everyone all day, every day, without hesitation or reservation, when these words are coming at me, I'm in Charlie Brown's classroom. I mean, all I hear is wah, 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 wah. And I had heard of stories like this before. In fact, when I was doing my fellowship, I was the first, as you had mentioned, I was the first breast fellow it's funny, right? Breast fellow. I was the first breast fellow in Philadelphia. And I was training with a woman whose partner had just retired because she got breast cancer. And like when a breast surgeon gets breast cancer, it's just like too much of an alternate reality.
Yeah.
So I walk out of the room. I refuse treatment. I just somehow knew, call it God, call it universe, call it, you know, insurmountable fear. I could not do that. That was not the right path for me to have surgery and chemoradiation and commit myself to lifelong medication. And so my doctor told me I was going to die, just like I had told thousands of women before that asked me what is going to happen if I do nothing. And I would tell them that they would die of their disease. So I walk out and I go home and I go to Dr. Google, right? Now, at the time,
the place you tell all your patients not to go to.
It's exactly what I tell everyone never to do, but I fancy myself like an educated consumer.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, at the time, Google was a little more of a trusted source in that now the information that you get from Google is the narrative is very controlled, right? You cannot find the truth on Google. Right. It's just there's no way to get to it. It's just not available to you, because if it is not supporting the narrative that the organizations that are controlling everything, if it doesn't agree with their narrative, it doesn't get out there. You can't find it. And, you know, there was no greater example than the last 3 years of, you know, anyone who was looking for truth. You couldn't find it because the truth seekers were all being silenced And I'm not trying to put a conspiracy theory out there, but that's the truth, is that we are very much living in a cancel culture right now. So if your opinion doesn't agree with that of big ag or big pharma or big gov, you can't say it. You just can't say it. It will fall on either deaf ears or no one will be able to hear it. So in any event, this is 2016, and I Google how to heal, and I see time and time and time again, diet, 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 diet. Now, as a traditionally trained physician, the amount of education that we get around food and nourishment is 15 hours in our first year of medical school. And then literally, I'm not exaggerating, literally never again. Never again. And I'm a surgical oncologist. So my training is 4 years of medical school, 5 years of residency, a year of fellowship. Right? So I'm talking about 10 years of higher education. Many of those years that I spent in residency and fellowship were like 60 to 80 hour work weeks. And I had 15 hours of training around how to nourish someone in my first year of medical school. Yeah. So you can see it's not a lot. So I decide that I'm going to enroll in the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, IIN. It's a certificate coaching program. I have to start somewhere, and I have to figure out what I can do within the confines of, I'm not leaving my practice. I'm not walking away from my job. So, I'm still like, I'm not sure where I am. Like, I'm running a cancer program. I'm a surgical oncologist. So, I haven't exactly abandoned the system quite yet. I haven't jumped ship. So I have to still color within the lines there. And yet I'm on my own health journey, which selfishly was about me. It wasn't about anyone else or anything else. It was about me. So I'm sitting in one of the first lectures, and I drove them crazy before I handed over whatever the tuition was, $5,000, which is not insignificant, right? And I drove them crazy. I'm already a doctor. I've been a doctor for 20 years. Are you sure I'm going to learn something? Is this going to be worthwhile for me? Am I wasting my money? Am I wasting my time? I'm really sick. I really need something. Da, da, da. So they assured me, yes, you're going to learn something. We have plenty of doctors, whatever. So I'm sitting in one of the very first lectures, and a man named Mark Hyman walks on the stage, introduces himself as a functional medicine physician. Now, I am still my snooty booty self. I'm a doctor. I know so much. I'm not overweight. I know everything I need to know. And so I say, there's no such thing as a functional medicine physician. What is this quack talking about? And then I remember that I'm sick and I'm there for a reason. So I check my ego at the door. I shut up. I tune in. And within 5 minutes of him speaking, my entire world makes sense. And I know exactly why I got sick. It was so that I could be in that room on that day listening to him speak. Because what he had to say over the next 2 hours was like my entire life's mission compressed into his lecture. And I knew that the reason that I got sick was because I wasn't on the right trajectory. And so many of us find messages in our diagnoses if we're looking for them, if we're open to them, and if we allow for them. And, part of being a lifelong learner is that you have to be willing to learn. And you have to get rid of that dogma that, what I learned then is the only truth. Because if that is how you're walking through life, then you're not serving you and you're not serving your patients. And what I learned from him was that the medical system, as it stands, has it all wrong, right? We call it a healthcare system, but it's not a healthcare system at all. It's a sick care system. The only way to get into the system is to get sick.
Oh,
And once you're in, you're not getting out. The only way to get out is to die, because there's nothing about the promotion of health. There's nothing about the reversal of disease that's happening within that system. And it's by design and intention. Now, that doesn't mean that providers are ill-intentioned. They're not. Everyone goes into medicine for a good reason. Everyone goes into medicine because they want to cure people. Everyone goes into medicine because they want to help and heal. The medical system, the educational system, that is built around profits. And quite frankly, you don't make money if people are well. And so there's no interest in making people well, except that I didn't want to be sick. And I knew that I was a ticking time bomb, and that unless I changed and unless I adopted what he was talking about, my ability to impact others was going away, because I wasn't I was losing my stage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm an early adopter. I get very excited about things. And so that day I enrolled in the Institute for Functional Medicine. And I spend the next 3 years just immersed in the study of functional medicine. I'm a sponge. I cannot get enough. And so it's nearing the end of my training. I don't think I was certified yet in functional medicine, but I was nearing the end of my training. And a woman comes in to see me for a breast mass. She's 19. And she gets wheeled into my office by her mother. She has MS, and her MS is so progressive that she cannot walk the 30 feet from the elevator to my office. Now, I had just listened to the lecture during the IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine. The education is broken up into modules, like kind of like body systems, but bigger, like we wouldn't call it studying the liver. We would call it studying the detoxification system, of which the liver is part of it. Mm-hmm. And so we had just finished the energy module, and the energy module talks about mitochondria and mitochondrial health. And as it turns out, MS is a mitochondrial disease. Mm-hmm. So Terry Walls is a physician in the Midwest who gets diagnosed with MS, and within 2 years goes from being completely high functioning and running the residency program for the Department of Internal Medicine at the University of Iowa Medical Center to she's in a zero gravity wheelchair, can't support her own weight. Her MS has progressed so far and so fast. And she figures out that her mitochondria are being poisoned by whatever they're being poisoned by, changes her diet, changes her lifestyle, does a little bit of detoxification stuff. Now, bear in mind, during those 2 years when her health was completely declining, she was on every drug, every study, had access to anything and everything the conventional medical world had to offer, and yet got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. So within 2 months of changing her diet, she's walking. 2 months of changing her diet, she's walking. Within 6 months, she's riding her bike 20 miles a day. She's back at work. They had let her go because she could no longer do the duties of her job. Mm-hmm. She's back at work running the department, and she's so great that they say to her, hey, like, you have to patent this, right? Yeah. You have to put people on your program. And since then, she has reversed MS in thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Mm-hmm. Thousands, right? Her book, called The Walls Protocol, is a bestseller over and over and over again because, she has created cures for people, like legitimate cures for people. So I just meet Terry Walls. I am brimming with excitement to talk to this 19-year-old and her mother about how she can reverse her disease and live a normal life. And so I'm going on, and I'm like a giddy school child because I really think that I can make a change and an impact for this woman. And after about 2 minutes, she puts her hand up in my face and says, "Are you going to do my biopsy or not?" And I was like, oh, yeah, not everyone wants to help themselves.
Yeah.
But I knew that I wanted to work with people that wanted to help themselves. And I knew that they could, right? I had seen the light, and I knew that not especially, but in the breast cancer space, where the conventional medical system is entirely focused on the tumor and treating the tumor, and you're at war and all of that. But the tumor is not the problem, right? The tumor is the symptom of the problem. And no one anywhere is thinking about why the problem exists, right?
Yeah.
They're not thinking about why that person sitting in front of you got breast cancer. And I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah. Do we know the root cause for breast cancer?
So when we look at breast cancers, and there is going to be a small genetic component. I'm not going to deny that, but the vast majority of breast cancers are caused by chronic inflammation over time. Now, what is causing your inflammation is going to be different than what's causing mine, right? But chronic inflammation over time coupled with immune deficiency. And we are living in an immune deficient world, because think of the things that take your immune system out. Stress, right? Who is managing their stress well? Who over the last 3 years has done a really great job with stress? Not many, right? So chronic stress, and there are a whole bunch of other things. Poor diet, and it doesn't even have to be like a processed food diet. You could be eating a diet that's not appropriate for you. For instance, if you have someone that has newly diagnosed autoimmune disease or osteoporosis or thyroid disease, we should be looking to see if these people have celiac disease. Because if you are constantly putting something in your body every single day that is seemingly good, right? Whole grain goodness is seemingly good, but to your body, it's poison. What's going to happen to your immune system over time? It may be able to keep up or even ramp up in the beginning, but over time, it's going to be exhausted, right? You can't work your bodyguards over time all the time. But that's what many of us are doing. That's what food sensitivity is, or toxins that are coming in through our food supply. And there's no paucity of them, right? There's tons of toxins in our food supply, or antibiotics, or anything that acts like an antibiotic or antibacterial or antifungal, or, and the list goes on and on. So we have this like chronic inflammatory state that we're living in. We take our immune system out of the picture, which is holding everything at bay, and suddenly you have a breast cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
And 80 to 90% of breast cancer diagnoses are completely avoidable. But we don't talk about health.
Yeah.
We don't talk about the promotion of health. And so people don't know.
Yeah. So how do we avoid that breast cancer? Say a woman is worried and concerned. What are some good quality steps that she can take to prevent breast cancer from ever coming in her life? So
the biggest problem is that most people don't think about it until they're under the gun, right? So if we may talk a good prevention game, but no one is really thinking about it until they're handed a diagnosis, or they have a scare. They have an abnormal mammogram, or they feel a lump in their breast, or something that motivates, something that instills fear. Because really, that's the only time we change. We only change when the fear of staying the same is bigger than the fear of change. But at the end of the day, breast health is health, right? And so the same things that you're going to do to drive health anywhere else are going to make healthy breasts, and vice versa. So I talk to people about eating a whole food, plant-based, grain-free, nourishing diet. For most people, I think that the benefits of eating whole food are undeniable. I think the benefits of eating grain-free is undeniable, and I know that's a sticking point for a lot of people who, if you're plant-based, they think that they need grains in their diet for calories, for nutrients. But let me tell you this. We have no nutritional need for grains, nothing. And if we never ate another grain again, we would suffer no nutritional deficiency. And so I just don't really believe in putting something in your diet that doesn't give you any benefit at all. And if it's fiber that you're after, you can get all that you need from your vegetables. You do not need grains for fiber. So the plant-based is because that's where the nutrients are coming from. The nutrients are in the soil and they get infused into the vegetables and the fruits. And when we consume them, we actually consume their properties. And so, one thing that I think about all the time is we have completely vilified the sun, right? And everyone's so afraid of sun and sunburns and this and that. But when you think about the plants that spend their time in the sun and do fine, it's because they're protected by their color. And when we consume those colorful plants, we actually acquire that same protection. And so, yes, if you're eating the standard American diet of, blonde food, you're not going to have that same protection. But if you're eating a deeply colorful diet that is really antioxidant rich, you're going to be fine in the sun. And, the other thing is avoiding inflammatory oils because they generate free radicals, which we know themselves damage the skin. So removing those inflammatory oils and instead replacing them with healthy fats like olive oil and avocados and nuts and seeds and olives, those things are going to confer skin health.
Yes. Yeah. I follow a lot of people who believe that removing those oils from the diet actually prevents burning from the sun. I've seen that in other people. I still burn a little bit after removing those, but I have to have a whole lot of sun exposure to burn, that kind of thing. You and I are 100% on the same page when it comes to wheat. I think they are completely unnecessary. They are inflammatory. Even if you don't have true celiac disease,
absolutely,
wheat sensitivity, I see it wreck people's gut health and change the microbiome of their gut. And yeah, it's fiber for bulking, but honestly, if you're having slowed motility, you don't need extra bulk to move through slower. You need the right type of.
You're right.
And
I don't know. I'm curious as to what you're seeing in your patient population, but it is an absolute rarity that I don't see gluten sensitivity. How about you?
Yeah, that is. Everything from acid reflux to asthma to I have psoriasis, and removing grains was a huge game changer for me in reducing and coming off meds and being psoriasis free. I think almost every chronic health condition has a root cause within inflammation, and that comes there. Now, I do think that you can have a very healthy diet, a very healthy whole foods diet, whether it's plant-based or animal-based. I have more of an animal-based mainstay. I eat very cleanly with that. Whole foods is.
Well, I don't think it's going to be animal-based in that For me, like where you get your protein from is your decision where you get your protein from. But I still think that people should be consuming mostly plants because I just don't think it's evolutionary to be all animal anything. There's no fiber in there. And I think that is a huge problem in our society is a lack of fiber. And it really does have health ramifications to not have fiber in your diet. Everything from gut function to hormone balance to detoxification.
Mm-hmm.
And but I try to stay out of the like fights about where your protein comes from, because if you're doing it responsibly and reasonably sourced and that's your thing, then that's your thing. And I would so much rather you eating well than throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Like for the person that says, I don't want to work with you because you're a vegan, I never want that. Like I come as you are and let's make it the best for you.
Very much so. There's not one perfect plan for every single person on this planet. We have to tailor to that. So even though I'm animal-based and I have people that prefer to be more plant-based and vegan, we still work with that. Removing the grains, removing the sugar. Those are the top two things.
For sure. Yeah.
I think those are the worst things that people can do for themselves. Let's talk about around to the stress side of it. Because in my general practice, I think women greatly underestimate how much the stress impacts their health. And let's think about, that woman who has received that breast cancer diagnosis and the emotions that she's going through during that time. What words of wisdom and what would you speak to about emotions that come after a breast cancer diagnosis and how to work on your stress habits and things once you receive that?
Yeah. So, most of the time, their diagnosis is not the first or biggest trauma. Mm-hmm. There's a book, I forget who wrote it, The Body Keeps Score, or The Body's Keeping Score. That's absolutely true. And so when we look at the population of women diagnosed with breast cancer, for early diagnoses, 30% of them will report trauma in their background. In my experience, it's more, but I'm just giving you the published statistics. When we're talking about people presenting with metastatic breast cancer, stage 4 breast cancer, now we're talking about 80% of these people have trauma in their background. Mm-hmm. And that's not including the trauma of being diagnosed with breast cancer. And this is something that we really need to be talking about more. Mm-hmm. Every person with a breast cancer diagnosis needs to be asked if there's trauma that they're holding on to. And there are many ways to release this trauma. So the past trauma, there are, many behavioral therapies to do it. I love the work that's been done with psilocybin. Psilocybin is a medicinal mushroom. Mushrooms are the kind of communicator of the forest. They line the forest floor and they turn rotting, decaying matter into that fruiting body that you know as a mushroom. They are transformative. And what specifically psilocybin does is it is a rewiring process for your brain, so that you can have what's called a journey, where this is a supervised journey where you're given a dose of psilocybin and you relive that trauma in a controlled scenario, but it's given a different meaning, a different significance, a different impact. Mm-hmm. And that rings true not only for those people with past trauma, but now let's fast forward to current day when you're given your breast cancer diagnosis. Mm-hmm. You can choose to see that as a punishment, choose to see yourself as a victim, choose the why me mentality, or you can ask why this is happening and ask what you are supposed to do with this, learn from this. And it may not be readily apparent, right? And this may not be what you're doing day one, right? Day one, you're like bowled over, smacked in the face. So this is something that comes with time, but it's all about reframing. Just like putting to rest that trauma that happened before. This is about reframing. Why are you being given this diagnosis? What meaning does this have for you? What is, cancer is a part of you. People who get breast cancer don't have a bad breast. Cancer is a normal response to an abnormal environment. And if you can step back and say, what is disturbing my environment without judgment, right? This isn't because you were a bad girl. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't ask for breast cancer. This isn't about toxic blame. It's not about shame. It's not about guilt. This is about taking an objective approach to what is my body trying to tell me? What do I need to change? Where does my course need to change? Because what you're doing isn't working for you. And it's the people that can accept that actually, I'm not going to say that breast cancer is a blessing, but it is an opportunity. And it's an opportunity to be a better, stronger, more vibrant, more connected version of yourself if you let it. If you let it. So it's all about how you frame it. It's all about the significance that you give to it. And it's your choice. You can choose to see it as a punishment, or you can choose to see it as an opportunity. And that's up to you.
Those are some powerful words, and thank you very much, because I know there are plenty of ladies within my audience and my patient population that are dealing with breast cancer. So if someone has this diagnosis and they would like more information about your programs and what you do, tell everyone how they can find you, how they can connect with you, that type of thing.
Yeah. So you can find me on social media at Dr. Jen Simmons, and my Jen has 2 N's. So that's Instagram and Facebook. I think I'm on TikTok. I don't know. I don't pay very much attention. My podcast launched this week, so you can definitely find me there. And that's Keeping Abreast with Dr. Jen. And where you can find us wherever you find your podcasts. I also have a Facebook group called Keeping Abreast with Dr. Jen. And there you can reach out to me and ask your questions. And we're talking about all of those things on the podcast. And then finally, if you want personal help with your journey, my website is realhealthmd.com. And I have a group. I have a course called My Answer to Breast Cancer, which is a tremendous resource for anyone who is either newly diagnosed, going through treatment, you've completed treatment, and you're in that quiet time of now what, or you're living with metastatic disease, or you just, want to be healthier so that you don't get another diagnosis. And so that course is called My Answer to Breast Cancer, and you can access that on realhealthmd.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking time with us this afternoon. I've enjoyed our discussion. I think you've probably spoken into the hearts of some ladies this evening. So take care and thank you.
Thank you.